Welcome to All Nature Connected, a podcast created by the Forest Bathing Institute, where we explore all nature connected topics, including nature and health, nature inspired lifestyle, nature connection and forest bathing, nature preservation, and eco awareness. We hope that this podcast will inspire you to become more connected with nature and your own health and well-being. Hello everyone, this is Olga, the founder of the Forest Bathing Institute, today with Joanna Bristow-Watkins and Katie Robinson, and today we'll be talking about how they led the forest bathing sessions for vulnerable groups and green social prescription projects, as well as them setting up their company Harmony in Nature. So hi Joe and Katie, it's lovely to have you on the podcast today. And I would love to ask you, maybe we start with Joe. So Joe, could you please tell us a bit what led you towards your interest in nature and forest bathing work that you are doing currently? I know we've covered it a bit in the previous podcast, but it would be nice to kind of refresh the memory.
Thank you, Olga. It's lovely to see you again. So I grew up from the age of 4 to 11 in well, I mean, it sounds very grand saying in the grounds of Henry VIII's Oatlands Palace, but wasn't quite as grand as it sounds. It's just, obviously the palace is long gone, but we did have a lot of ancient woodland that was in the neighbouring sites to ours. And I'm afraid, being young children, we didn't really realise that we were actually trespassing when we went through a hole in the fence. So we spent many hours in the woods as children, and I do remember a lot of bluebells there, so I'm sure it was very ancient woods, as I've said. So that was just something that my sister and I did, you know, all the holidays, whatever the weather, really. So yeah, I've had it from early age, and coming round to why I'm doing it now. I had a background in training and travel for many years, but after having my children, I've kind of done various things, and part of what I do is energy healing. And to be honest, energy healing is quite sort of well, people might describe it as woo-woo. It's becoming a lot more mainstream than it was. But having gone on a couple of forest bathing sessions with you, Gary, Olga, and maybe then I only just saw it as experiential, but then I saw that you were offering to train people to do the guiding themselves. And I thought it might be a little bit more of a mainstream, even though it's not considered mainstream necessarily, but more of a mainstream leader for me as well, to introduce people to what I do in a less, what's the word, esoteric environment.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joe. And I still remember the days, and we were talking with Gary recently about how we were training, we were camping outside. It was really lots of fun. And today we sent out a newsletter to our subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed, please do on our website, talking about how forest bathing has gained popularity in the recent years. So it's definitely accepted by lots of mainstream movement, but also it's growing so much, and we hope that it will be where yoga was maybe 10-15 years ago, and it will gain popularity. So thank you for spreading the nice work and for sharing your story. So Katie, the same question, if you could share a little bit about how you got interested in nature connected work and forest bathing as well.
Well, I think, like Joe, I've had nature in my life for most of it, really. I remember when we lived in Bristol when I was small, our housing estate just backed onto some woods, and we used to just go there and roam around. And I just feel privileged to have been able to do that with a couple of friends. And then we just come back. They knew vaguely where we were, but they're large woods. We just had fun doing that. And then I think I mean, my father grew up in Liverpool, so it was very city, no nature. And after he was evacuated to Wales, he just loved the countryside so much. So when we grew up, we were always going off youth hosteling, camping, a lot of outdoor holidays, walking holidays, weekends going to moors, and we had holidays in the Lake District. So nature was really, fortunately, through my parents, always present, really. So I think, of course, in your 20s, 30s, you tend to lose contact with it to some extent because life gets busy. And then we had children. We always tried to keep a bit there. But I think for me, a lot of there was a big family shift in 2015. And I remember thinking, and my sons were going to start the A-levels and university. And I thought, gosh, you know, if I was at their stage in life, what would I do? And I thought I would want to have more nature in my life. So I feel that actually I sort of attracted you and Gary in because I was thinking, I don't want to go back to university. I don't want to start doing a degree. I want something that's an experience. And because I think it was Joe actually who'd mentioned to me that you were doing yoga and gong. I'd already been going for quite a while, probably a year and a half, something like that. And with the Saturday ones, it was quite near Newlands Corner. So I would usually have an hour of yoga, an hour of gong, and then go and spend at least an hour up in the ancient woods. So I was just really chilled out by the end of those Saturdays. So I managed that about twice a month. So it was really because I knew you. And I suppose I remember Gary approaching me, and I suppose I was pretty much a dead cert candidate given those where I used to go afterwards. So yeah, he just asked if I was interested, and I said, yes, tell me more. And there we go. The rest is history. But I remember very fondly that first training that we did. It was really flying by the seat of the pants, wasn't it?
Yes.
You upstairs madly photocopying when we arrived.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting journey. I would say it was learning journey for us and still is. And I remember how much I learned from you, Katie, in terms of essential oils, and still am learning in terms of how much nature can bring out the benefits of chemicals and chemistry in the air. So it's fascinating how every member of the team brings their own specific interest, and we all learn from each other. So I think that's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing, Katie. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was, for those who don't know, we've been leading green social prescribing projects in Surrey, in UK. And so the green social prescription projects are when we lead people into nature for health and well-being benefits. Normally, we also cooperate with a university to do research to show the benefits for health and well-being of those sessions in the forest. We've done, the recent one we've done was with UCL, the university in London, and we measured the well-being benefits of nature. And we worked with 3 charities, the charity for homeless people, also refugees, and also mental health charity. And so what the idea is, once we look at how these sessions can benefit people, they will be part of the green social prescribing. And now they are part of the green social prescribing, which means in Surrey, which means when you are going to your doctor, for instance, if they think that you might have depression, they can direct you towards our sessions. So we hope to spread this project all over the country and maybe even other countries, who knows. But it was really great to have you both, Joe and Katie, lead the sessions. I think you led 2 sessions, but led two sets of groups into the forest for green social prescribing. So I think it's such a pioneering experience for all of us. And I know that we have some guides also listening to you, and also people who are interested in how nature can help our health and well-being, and how nature can be part of the NHS and other health systems in other countries. So I would just like to know, what was your experience during those sessions, and especially if you had some moments where it was maybe eye-opening to you, or some outstanding experience that you would like to share with our listeners. So Joe, if I can start with you, that would be great.
Well, it's a lot of possibles that I can say there. So just to categorize very quickly the two separate projects we were involved with. The first one was with the University of Derby, and that was a group of 10 individuals that Katie and I co-guided. And that was a 6-week course where the same 10 were supposed to come every week, and most of them did, to be honest. I think we had a couple that came for all 6 weeks. Most of them came for 4 or 5 weeks, and one person who just came for 3 weeks. So that was how the program was supposed to work, because you start with an introduction and all-round experience, and then you go into the separate senses a bit more deeply, and then in the final week you do the review, if you like, and what they can take away to bring into their life, to bring nature, more regularly into their lives. And then the second project that you mentioned with UCL, with Kat from UCL, the lovely Kat, she had brought a new project forward, if you like, for Gary, and that was the one where we were involved with the 3 different projects, the 3 different charities, sorry, that you mentioned. So we had homeless people, asylum seekers, and young homeless people, asylum seekers, and people with mental health challenges. So the difference with that was it was a bigger group for a start. We had 20, and we were both there as guides, but obviously it was a bigger group anyway. But the biggest challenge for us was that it should have been the same 20 people, ideally, every week. But in fact, we got new people every week. Even in the final week, we had 21 participants, of which 7 were new that day. And in fact, you were there, Olga, so you know. But 7 on the day that was supposed to be the summary of the other 5 weeks was quite challenging. But we did have some really amazing experiences. We'll talk about the bigger group, because obviously that was the more challenging, just because we had new people every week. And we reckon that we probably had about 40 people through that programme overall, by the time we look into how many new people came. And in a way, we were a victim of our own success, because the people were going back and saying how much they enjoyed it, and that's why there were lots of new people wanting to come along the next time. Plus the asylum seekers, the way it works with the wonderful charity that we were working with, Big Leaf, for that. Apparently the asylum seekers tend to only stay for about 3 weeks, so we were never going to be able to get them for the whole 6-week program. But one of the asylum seekers, who actually didn't speak any English, she was from Uganda, and she had to leave her children behind in Uganda, which I cannot imagine how terrible that must feel for an individual. And she often said through the interpreter that she missed them every day, and of course you would. But she gave us the feedback that during the period of our sessions, she actually didn't think about how sad she was to have left them behind. So we were able to give her a little bit of respite, which was very meaningful to us. And the other thing that was very exciting, and I'm sure Katie will add some more to this, but we had a lot of really wonderful engagement from the young people, the young homeless people, which we weren't sure how engaged they would be, to be honest. But of course, like a lot of these things with the green prescription, it's not like the GP forces you to go and you're not someone who's at all interested in nature. It's not how it works. It tends to be the ones who already have an affiliation with nature who ask for the green prescription in the first place. So I guess we should have realised that it probably wasn't going to be like that. But 1 or 2 of the young lads were just so engaged, and we do a bit where we didn't know that it would work, because we say we have lots and lots of tools, partly because it's such a wonderful program you taught us. We've got a massive toolbox and so it was a case of picking what we hoped were the right ones, and we were very much focusing on the ones that would deal with the fact that they had trauma and didn't feel safe in the world potentially. So we tried to really home in on the techniques to encourage their brain to feel like they were safer. And we used a little technique there where we just suggested that they released anything, any baggage, if you like, any thoughts that weren't helping them into the earth, in one of our tree relaxations that we do at the end, the relaxation under the trees. And this young lad said afterwards, he said to me, oh, I really released a lot then, and I feel a lot better for that. So that was really wonderful. And then the same lad, about 2 weeks later, we did the tree connection, slightly different. And we invited anyone who felt confident to have a conversation with the tree, if that felt right for them, you know, that they could tell the tree their troubles and might feel relief from it. And the same lad came up afterwards. He said, I've had a really, really difficult week, but that was really helpful. So there you go. You know, that was made it all worthwhile, didn't it, Katie?
Yes, absolutely.
So wonderful to hear that, Jo. And I know it did take us, lots of us time to come up with this project, to put all the pieces together, because it's, even in green social prescribing, it's not common to work with 3 organizations at once and then having different participants all the time, just because of the nature of charity. As you said, Jo, the asylum seekers needed to leave after 3 weeks, and then the new ones were coming. It's definitely challenging, but just to hear such beautiful feedback from participants, how it helped parents and how it helped a younger person to relax and just let go of, as you said, baggage. It's just so, I think it makes it worthwhile, and then we kind of understand why we're doing all this. Just to say, in terms of green social prescribing, because we, Gary and I just went to WWF to present on green social prescribing projects that we've been doing in Surrey. And while, as you rightly said, Jo, most of the time now, at the moment, you have to go, when you go to your GP, you need to maybe ask for green social prescribing if you know about it. It's not self-prescribed, so you can't actually prescribe it to yourself yet. There's definitely, we are working a bit more on communication and being able to work together so that the sessions are known to the health providers, and they know when they can direct and whom they can direct the people to. But as it's such a young project still, we are developing it, but hopefully it will be better linked and, you know, and working at a much greater level, at a much more efficient level. But currently, of course, it's at a trial level, and I think it's beautiful results that you've shared with us, Jo, that the participants, the vulnerable members of the society felt. So thank you for sharing, Jo. And Katie, what about you? Did you have any outstanding experiences for yourself, or maybe those shared by the participants that you would like to share with us?
Yes, certainly. I'll continue, as we were last talking about the more recent project with the 3 charities. So I'll continue with that first, but make sure I go back to the other one as well. So yes, this, I think what Jo and I both felt actually, that to do this work is really actually a privilege. Each time it's really felt a privilege to be there regularly, showing up for these people who are also showing up. And, you know, there are, even though we probably had, as Jo said, maybe 40 or so, even though it was around 20 most weeks, so many people, and you could really see the things that they shared, sometimes on the walk to or from the bit of forest we were going into. And one of them was saying, she said, you know, each week I come, I feel as if I'm starting from a different place. I'm in a better place each time. And it's definitely encouraging me to connect with nature in little ways in the meantime. She said, I just feel it's really incremental. I think she used that word. It just builds week on week. So it was wonderful to know that. So those sorts of things, there were a few comments in that arena. I think also, actually, to be honest, the fact that, I mean, I know that you, Gary, put so much effort. It took months and months, almost the best part of a year, to bring this particular grouping together. And for the numbers, But actually, even though there were complications, because we wanted to keep the numbers at about 20, and sometimes there'd be a small group that said, oh, we definitely can't come this week, and they'd cast around and find some replacements. It wasn't the same experience as deepening and deepening and deepening, because we always had to recap. And so usually one of us would be, as we were walking to the forest, one of us would be running along behind with a little group, or we do a little presentation at the arrival point while the others were checking in or doing their forms with Kat, and just try to do a mini introduction for just to give them a vague idea, because a lot of them had never heard of it. They'd just come along because they'd been invited. We did have one returnee from the first group, actually, from the group, the first project with Mind, and she said, oh, I only just heard about it this morning. So she came back, which was lovely to see her. So I think really it was really flying by the seat of our pants, that whole 6 weeks, that last one, because we just never knew how many were going to turn up. Obviously, we don't hold any records of those participants. That's for the staff and the charity to hold. So we don't know what their issues were specifically, but we just knew the areas. We didn't know how that was manifesting for them. But it was a real, in a way, it was just amusing. You had to keep a sense of humor about it, and Joe and I are used to working together, so it was just quite fun, actually. We're going, oh, wonder who we're going to get today. How many will we recognize? So but it was just such a privilege, because those who were there and came multiple times really felt they benefited from it, and were releasing stuff, and they certainly went away saying that it encouraged them to reconnect on a more daily, weekly basis. And that's what we want, after all, in whatever way that might be. And we did give them a lot of extra tips that are not normally part of an average forest bathing session for the public, of how to soothe the nervous system when you're feeling stressed or anxious. So we were adding in those things like the eye movements, the different breathing techniques and things like that, and rubbing or massaging bits of your body. So we added a few in then. And with the one we did last year with the group from Mind, that was really gratifying. It was a very different sort of feel, but 9 out of 10 of them completed the course. There were a couple of absences for illness. Somebody had booked a holiday, but apart from one of them, they all kept coming. And I think it was 5 out of 10 came for all 6 sessions, which was amazing. And the staff member who accompanied, she said, 9 out of 10, should we never have that sort of retention for normal, which to the participants, it's free. So yeah. And even a couple the first week we felt really didn't engage. And I remember talking to one of them afterwards, and I said, just give it a go. I said, I really get it, because I was always very speedy and I found it problematic slowing down, thinking, oh, I could have walked miles in that time, but that isn't the aim of this. So we just had a little chat, and I said, give it a go, come back. And I was crossing my fingers of all the participants that this one would return, because I thought they're going to really benefit if they do. And they did indeed come back, came for all the sessions and really did benefit. So those little moments are really lovely when you know it's worked for people who are in a particularly bad place. So yeah.
Can I just come in there and comment on Katie's point there, that we had a couple in the first week who didn't really engage, and just to explain to the other guides who might be listening to this, when we did the tree relaxation at the end, they chose to stand up, and obviously you can have a situation where people sit down or sort of lean against something, but that was quite a key sign to us that they weren't really engaging, because they felt maybe subconscious, or we got the feeling that was quite a negative response to that particular invitation. But those 2 were 2 of the 5 who came to all 6 weeks, and by the end of it, I would say they were possibly the ones who got the most, actually.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show how perseverance is really important, and also maybe just the recognition of for us to have noticed that was the case, that we just took a little bit of extra care with those people, perhaps in a very subliminal way, but we were just trying to be encouraging and to not sort of make them feel bad for not wanting to lie down, but we were internally sort of noting, if you like, that that was a sign, there was a reason for it. And in one case, the gentleman that Katie's referring to, it turned out that he's a bit of a sort of speed walker, and that was why he was particularly triggered by the slowness of everything. And I'm not really sure why the other lady didn't particularly engage in that first week, but she was coming with a friend, wasn't she, Katie? And they both continued to come. I think they might have missed 1 week for different reasons. In fact,
I think they both came, and
they came for all 6 weeks. And you know, she's still been in touch with us from time to time since. And you know, it's a real wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just you never know whom you're gonna get and what benefits they're gonna get. And sometimes I think as a guide, you're worried that maybe someone is not engaging as much, and maybe they're not at that particular session, but if they persevere over time, they might feel the benefit. And I know this was similar experience actually to mine when I was reconnecting back with nature. We just did an interview for Will Young's Wellbeing Lab podcast, and I shared my journey with nature connection. And I think once you are disconnected, especially if you maybe have a busy mind and you're used to fast movements, fast walking, it can take a bit of time. But if you have belief in that it's going to help you or be beneficial, time well spent, as we say, it would really help. And we are now working at implementing the longer groups of sessions, like 6-week sessions for the public as well, because it's definitely the fact you can build on it. And you can, even if one time maybe it was something like you weren't sure about and you might want to go again, and you already build a rapport with the guide, you know the group, you can actually go deeper into the experience. So it can be very interesting and very gratifying. So thank you both for sharing. And I went to the last session from the last group that you led, and I can say that it was so relaxing that I know when I'm relaxed, because I normally just want to lay down and fall asleep during the last part of relaxation meditation. And your mind slows down and you don't have many thoughts in your head. You're just enjoying your day like you're on vacation. And I think it worked very well together. And the amount of information you also share, like tools to go ahead and use at home after the session, it's just so beautiful and rewarding. And I think you have such a beautiful synergy in between you two. As you say, you've been working together for quite a while, and it just feels like it's one person guiding you rather than different styles, you know, mixing in, and it's just so harmonious. And interestingly enough, your organization that you've just set up is called Harmony in Nature, which I think is very, very appropriate for what you are doing. And if you would like to share about how you've set up this organization, what's your what was the purpose of it, and also maybe the events that you're running. I know you run regular events, but also maybe you are offering private events or retreats or something like this. If you would like to share, Joe, if we can start with you, and maybe Katie can add.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, so we've qualified at slightly different times. Katie was in your first intake of guides and I was in the second intake, but I think there was maybe 6 or 9 months in between the training, perhaps as much as a year, I'm not sure, but we were both early candidates. And obviously afterwards I did my 6 case studies very quickly, probably a bit too quickly to be honest, but it sort of happened a bit by default really, and I think because we trained in the summer as well, I didn't really want to I wanted to get it done before the winter. So the long and short of it is that we probably both set out as independent practitioners, therapists, whatever you want to call us, guides obviously, at a similar time. And Katie and I have actually known each other for about 7 years, we reckon.
Yeah, maybe longer.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
maybe longer, but we kind of met a few years ago. I used to run the networking organisation. In fact, I think you were involved with that, Olga. You came along a few times, you and Gary, didn't you? So I used to run the Fabulous Women in Walton-on-Thames, and of course it wasn't just women, hence why Gary could come. But we'd met through that many years ago, and we'd connected a bit at the time, but we both had very busy lives, and we'd sort of wandered off and just hadn't really kept that connection frequent. But we then came together again through a third party who we both knew was running a regular meditation group, and she wanted to retire from doing that. She'd known me a long time as well, and she asked me if I would take over this meditation group. And then when I got there to kind of meet the group, Katie was one of them, so that kind of reintroduced me to her. Plus, of course, when I came along to your training, because Katie was one of the very first people, three of the four that did the first course were actually back with our group observing, and ultimately became part of the training team. So we knew each other pretty well, and in fact I'd never camped before, believe it or not, because camping in our family was something that it was a dads and kids camping program that the school had. And the kids absolutely adored it. And I hate to think what Richard let them get up to, actually, my husband, because they used to come home absolutely filthy. And one time they admitted that they hadn't taken the same ponytail out for the entire weekend. It was completely capped in mud and goodness knows what else. But anyway, they had a fantastic time. But I didn't go, because that was the whole point of it, was that it was a nice little treat for the dads to have their beers and barbecues together, and the kids got into mischief, etc. So I'd never been camping, and you probably remember I grew up in the travel industry. My dad had a chain of travel agencies, and he was a pilot. So we were very fortunate and did 5-star accommodation all over the world when I was growing up. So roughing it in a tent wasn't something on my radar at all. But because Katie had her own tent, we camped in your garden that week, and it was amazing. So yeah, I think that also cemented our friendship, because I think we got very little sleep, actually, even though the course was really intensive. We couldn't stop talking all night, could we?
Yeah, I think it felt like being away on a brownie camp or something. We'd say, oh right, we'll stop talking now, we'll go to sleep. But then one of us would think of something.
By the way, yes, I forgot to say. So I don't know if we've been sisters in the past or what in another life, but we certainly had a lot of similarities between us. Of course, we're different people in many ways, but there's a lot of synergy, as you say. So when we both set up, what was happening was that we found that we were going to each other's events, because we had a little chat about it, and we said, you know what, actually it's really nice when you're not leading an event, it's quite nice to join in and enjoy it. So we had this little pact, if you like, that I went along as a guest to her events and she went along as a guest to my events, and that way we could top up our own well-being. So that was kind of how it started. And then because we both knew that we had a backup, because it was in our diaries, if one of us was ill, which I don't think ever happened, but it was there, or if an appointment cropped up and we actually then had a double booking, we actually knew that we could sub for each other at the events. And then it got to the point where we'd say the introduction, and because we knew the other one was there, I'd look over and say, have I missed anything, Katie? And then she would say, well, blah, and one or two things I might have overlooked or that she felt was important to that group. And then I think it became more and more that we were doing half each. So I don't know if it sort of happened by default, but we also just felt that there's something about having accountability in business. So there was more, what would I say, structure to trying to get business when I knew I was letting her down if I didn't get on with the stuff. So, and things like the branding and everything else, we each had various contacts. So I think Katie came up with the name Harmony and Nature, but it was a bit of a case of we had to look online and see, because we wanted to take it from a URL. We wanted to get the domain name, and obviously some of the things that we might have liked were taken, but we managed to get Harmony and Nature Co UK and Harmony and Nature UK, and then we got the logo and so on. So I think we started in the tax year of 2020.
I don't know whether we've been going. It's nearly 2 years. I'm not sure. It's whizzed past anyway.
Well, that would be 3 years, wouldn't it? I think this is our third.
It's not that.
Okay, no, so maybe it's 21. I don't know, but anyway, whatever it is, it's been going a while now. And yes, in the way of projects, we've got a few sites that we work at regularly. We've got a couple more possibly in the pipeline, but we won't talk about those until they actually come to fruition. Do you want to talk about our venues, Katie, and what we've done?
Yeah, if you can share a bit about the venues and also where people can find more about you guys and follow you, as some people might want to follow up and maybe share, ask you some questions about your experience. We'll always encourage that.
Yeah, well, we have there's a common that we use up in London, Cannon Hill Common near Rains Park. I used to live near there actually, and Joe's daughter lives near there. So that's been nice to have a little urban place where we can get people who, because we both have contacts up in the London area as well. And it's very interesting having different sorts of locations actually. I mean, we loved it when we did use Newlands Corner, but obviously that's just for the charity sessions now. We've got the Common in London. We also run some events at Harry Edwards, which is, I mean, funnily enough, Joe and I both have very long-standing relationship with Harry Edwards, because my mum was in touch with the people who took over from Harry Edwards himself through healing and stuff. And Joe was a speaker there about 20 years ago. So it was really lovely to be there. So I actually feel quite close to my mum when we're doing something there. I think she would love it. She'd have been there coming to all the events. So that's really nice because it's quiet. It's private, although we, you know, obviously we have permission to use it and let them know if we're cancelling or arranging new things. But we're just left very much alone there, and it's nice to not have cyclists and other people going through. So that's a good place for people if they want a little more tranquility. And I think the fact it's run from the sanctuary, we often get quite a lot of people who seem to have a more spiritual outlook on life, shall we say. That's sort of the way it happens. And we have some other venues that we use for private work. It could be for families, interest groups or corporate groups that we use and have permission for. One site near Woking, also near Epsom as well, and that's a really beautiful private ancient woodland. And so those are things that we sort of, while we don't run regular events there, we're very happy if anyone wants to contact us and say, I've got half a dozen friends or 10 of us want to come and do something, we can look to see what their interest is, what it is they want from it, and choose a venue. Obviously, it might be location specific for them. We did do a really nice corporate group recently from WWF, actually, on Horsell Common. It was just a small team of them. And that was really lovely, because also what they shared towards the end was that, in fact, while they came into their jobs to save nature, and because they loved nature, they spent 100% of their time for work behind a computer. And it was a real reminder of why they'd got into the work in the first place, and how they could try to bring some more nature into their daily lives. And they are fortunate enough to actually have an office where birdsong is played through speakers all day, and they have 3 large trees growing in the atrium. So they're not without nature. But it was interesting that being out in real nature felt like a real change for them. So that was really interesting. So we're open to all sorts of offers, really. We have we're harmonyinnature.uk is the one we're currently using, although we do have the other URL. And also we have a Facebook page, Harmony in Nature, and we're on LinkedIn as well. Where else are we, Joe? And then there's Joanna Bristow-Watkins and Katie Robinson. We both have our own contacts as well, so we're available on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I haven't used my Twitter account, so I won't mention that.
We have Insta
Joe
as well.
Oh yes, we do have Insta, don't we? Yes, there's just the Harmony in Nature Insta.
I think it's Harmony in Nature UK, our handle on Insta, isn't it?
I'll share the details
yes.
below.
Yeah.
So if you send them to me afterwards, I'll share with the listeners so they can always get in touch.
Okay.
But thank you so much both for sharing. And it's just beautiful to hear about how you've developed this beautiful organization with your own touch, your own expertise in it, which I think adds a lot of value and beautiful character to it. And as I say, we're all individuals. We're working together as an organization at TFBI, but also as individuals bringing a lot to the therapy. And I think everyone can benefit from time in nature. Even we who are spending maybe a lot of time in nature just because of what we're doing, everyone can benefit from more time in nature. And that's the beauty of it. You can't overdose on nature. You just, like, as I joke around, the side effect could just be that you end up doing what we're doing, but I think it's a nice side effect. So thank you so much, both Joe and Katie, for such a beautiful, informative interview. I think it will be helpful for many people to listen to it who are interested in green social prescribing, and also maybe becoming a guide or setting up their own company if they're already forest bathing guides and maybe need a bit of inspiration. So you're definitely inspiring me every day with everything you're doing, all your courage, and at the same time lightheartedness and compassion when you're leading sessions. So thank you so much, and we hope to do this again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you for inviting us.